I feel like the tarot card is a really perfect encapsulation of Carly's unique point of view and approach to directing. So maybe you can kick us off with that.
Also, shout out, Zach did the art for that card.
Right.
Doing everything. So I gave myself a weird moniker of Thespomancer, Thespian Necromancer. So I believe that a play is a spell. I think that it is a live ritual with real people, their feelings, their voices, their bodies, that in these words that you tell over and over on stage, night after night, in front of other people, having this live exchange. And so I believe that we need to be intentional about what spells we cast in the world and what art we make. And so I really weave like archetype and power and intentionality into the process. So a big thing was this tarot card, the archetype of the Hangman Tarot, which in the major arcana comes after justice and before death. And it's really about surrender and shift of perspective and sacrifice. And so I really resonated with this archetype, and Zach made art from it, a unique card based on the play, and I kind of expanded to figure out what card each of the characters was, bring in those archetypes, and I guess the other two big parts, I work with music a lot as a way in. I make a playlist, like just for the world of the show, months before we start, and share it with the actors, just so everyone, I think music is a really accessible way to get into themes and emotions in a world. And then I think the other core tenet of my practice as a director is just really deep care for the folks who work on it, especially when you have really charged material like depicting torture and execution for 2 hours on stage. I think in order to do this sustainably and in a way that it's not like the message we're trying to tell, the cost of that happened to the artist in the process, that messes with the spell. So I think it's really important to just build a container, and as a director, to be a steward of really deep care and trust being built between the artists who do this ritual with their bodies night after night.
So again, I'd love to hear from our other amazing directors. Is there something that you do in your directing practice that feels like unique to you or a reflection of your values and approach as a director?
I mean, it's so wild because I don't really ever think about this. I just go into the temple and just work. I think for me, probably it's just, maybe it's because my focus recently has been on new works, but then I also have this Shakespeare thing. It really, like my focus is about getting everyone, the designers, the actors, producers, everybody, I mean, in a way, in a sense of like the collaboration and our responsibility to tell the truth of this story, and so that's sort of like what I call everybody around in the first few rehearsals, the first rehearsal especially, is that that's our responsibility, and it's going to be I'm just here as the manager, and also the vision provider, I suppose. But I'm such a collaborative director. I cannot work alone. I just couldn't. I don't know how that would happen. I rely heavily on the designers and the actors and what they bring to it. And it's probably because I was an actor before I was a director, but I really trust that, and I trust my casting in that, and also my team building around that, so that we are focused, as much as we can be on the words, the text, the story, and then, and discovering what that truth is. Now that truth, obviously with Shakespeare, because it's been interpreted a million times, is the truth of our moment, my interpretation of it, right? So that's the seed of that. And in the new works, it's, the collaborative work with the playwright and the dramaturg, and that sort of triumvirate, us as a triumvirate, bringing that to the cast. And again, I just go back to the trust of the people that I call to come, or that I'm called by the producer, and then we're all, and then the work begins. But you know what I mean? That is sort of maybe the thing that I come back to again and again.
Yeah. I just kind of want to echo and build off of, and so much of it is also determined on what the process is. So if it's a piece that is like, something that's your own thing that you've kind of had a reaction to, you build it in a different way than when you're hired as a director. And I just keep thinking, for directors, usually we are viewed as kind of interpretive artists or generative artists. And so when you're an interpretive artist, you're given a script and it's your job to kind of excavate what's there. And oftentimes it's a very linear process where you have to kind of design the show before you've had one day in the room with artists. And it's not the way I love to work. I don't think anyone that likes to work out. It's just the way the model has been shaped. And so that's one way, and then the other way is where you're more generative and collaborative. And for me, it's also the major question is whose story am I telling, and what community am I trying to have on stage. And if I'm not a direct member of that community, then it's oftentimes a very open collaborative process because I'm seeking to create space for them and then to help shape some storytelling around that. And so I just keep thinking about that with a lot of my collaborations. I'm not deaf or I'm not Japanese American, but I love being an artist that can kind of also provide an outside perspective. But a lot of it is also building a lot of time in the room to just listen to folks from that community, to my designers, and then even pushing against the process that wants you to have everything decided. And some directors work that way. It's the same with playwrights. Some playwrights can go away and alone, craft this beautiful diamond of a play and be like, there it is, I'm done. And others are like, here's my messy first draft, and I know I'm going to do the workshop process and bring in other folks. And I just think most of us on stage are very collaborative and very open that way, and that is what continues to feed us in the process. And then I use a lot of research and a lot of trying to, for big productions, it's just about getting on the same page because you can't be there for every step of the thing. You need everyone to make sure you're on the same vocabulary, and so I just use a lot of kind of pre-planning and research to help being passed back and forth to help do that.
Great thing. Let's see. Things that I do. Let's see. I have viewpoints is a big part of my life and my work, and that is exactly. But ensemble building, I would say, I have a thing that I often say, especially just speaking of new work. I often say to actors, I'll just because you want to try to build trust in a room and trust between them, especially, but also I often say don't worry, I'm not gonna let you look like an asshole. which on one level it's it's funny, but it's also it says something. It's me saying that out loud because I have responsibility in the room in terms of that and trying to lay that foundation out. And then creating a space where they can learn how to trust each other and discover together, especially with a new play, like you say, collaboratively, playwrights in the room, and we're all having a conversation about what it is. I often think of a play as a puzzle, and there are puzzles that you know what it's supposed to look like, right? We all got to figure out how to get there, and where's that piece? But then there's the new plays where you're not really sure exactly what it looks like, but then how do I also keep it going so that it's the playwright who's deciding what it actually looks like in the end, and not me being like, it should be round and things like, so I'm not prescribing things, but I am listening to the room. And the other thing I would say, the big thing for me is to go in with a plan and be able to let it go. Yeah. Because the room is going to tell you, I got to listen to the room, see what's going on. How are we doing today? Where are we going to get? And then evaluate again at the end of the day. Okay, then I'm going to need to kind of push us this way. I think of directing often, like you said, it's captain the ship, as it were, or whatever, so that you're going to try to keep steering it forward. But sometimes it's ooh, we're going to go over here for a while, and it's I got to get back on track. That's I think one of I think of as my job. To keep it moving towards, because you got to date your opening. Let's go. Here we go.
Port to pull into.
Exactly. Yes. Hopefully it's built.
Amazing. Well, that was just so exciting. I wish we could deep dive on each one of those things. Well, Jessica, I'll stay with you. A question for you, because you do so much new work, and often you're working with playwrights from a first draft. Maybe not even a reading yet, but you're the first reader all the way through to a production. Can you talk to us about how you have influenced or shaped pieces that you've been with from beginning all the way to production?
Let's say an example. Oh, okay. Most recently, I worked with Roger Q. Mason on Hide and Hide over at Skylight, and I will say that like that one went through a couple. Came to me at least a couple drafts in, but 3 years before, and we did a workshop where we had an actual week of work with actors in the room, Roger working, and they were really, I will say, having a playwright who is up for what that process is, and also having actors in the room who are up for that process, and also trying to be very clear about that's what the process is, so that no one's taken by surprise. And that one went through a lot of changes over the course of, because after that workshop, LA Performance Practice put us up in the LAX Fest, and then Skylight got interested from there. We did a whole nother workshop after that, I want to say in the next year after that, then did another workshop after casting it, about 3 months before we got to moving into the space, or into rehearsal, I should say. And then we were making changes in it up until, like, one of my favorite, this happened a few times, but one of my favorite nights, and it was literally like 48 hours before the first preview, where it was two actors. In the room was also the sound designer, 2 producers, and myself and the playwright. And there was a moment where I looked at the actors and I said, we're going to spend this entire rehearsal talking through this whole script. Because we knew that, and like, it was like, we know that ending's not quite working, it's too long, there were things that need to be fixed, or worked on. And one of the things I did, I looked at the actors, I was like, we're going to talk through this whole thing tonight. This is what we're doing. Are you guys okay with this? And they were up for it. And we literally went through, beat by beat, them saying the words out loud, playwright trying things out loud, having ideas about how there had to be a whole nother scene. and having that moment as a like, trying not to squash the idea, but also being the voice again, or the captain being like, okay, I'm just saying that means that in the next 48 hours, these 2 people and myself have to entirely add this scene that you say you're going to write in the next, So it's just like, okay, and here's that. And so then through that conversation and everybody in the room collaborating, other solutions presented themselves. And really defining what those parameters were of like, this has, because again, timeline, right? We got this time. And so I think there was, and that's the thing, I don't want to say, to take credit for anything on one level, but as the guide of the whole thing, to make sure that was going to land. And what we came out of that rehearsal was so exciting. And like that was like, it's thrilling and some scary. I mean, thrilling includes fear. Right? So like, but it's that moment of like, ooh, new play, right? And it's like really like, oh, and everybody's in it, and everybody is playing with it, and everybody is invested in a way, so that then the next 2 days before preview, there was, again, I mean, not that it hadn't been before, but everybody's really into it, and really like, the buy-in became even deeper, and the work got deeper. So that, I guess that's the that answer?
It's like, it sounds very brave to
Yeah.
hold that space and then allow what emerged, and then be the person who's like, also 48 hours.
Totally. Well, then also just to say the bravery also, because I also came up as an actor. So also having an understanding of the bravery that it takes to do that kind of work. And because I've also been in situations with new plays where it's been like, okay, we're going to make this change, and let's bring that monologue back that we cut like a week ago, and having an actor look at me and be like, I don't know that actor. And I'm like, but you were just doing it a week ago. Gotcha. Okay. Great. Okay. And like, again, what's the solution? And also knowing that sometimes you can't, like, don't push that, and see what's happening in the space. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Snehal, going toward the more director as generator conversation, you and I have talked about how a lot of the people who really inspired you as a director are these generator creators like Robert O'Hara. So I'm really curious, because I know you've also you've interpreted work, you now are doing, sort of revivals, and you've also written your own work. Can you talk about how those directors really inspired you and like how they've shaped the artist you are now?
Yeah, and the folks that I really love are like a Julie Taymor or Simon McBurney or a Minushkin, or these folks who are conceiving and imagining a world in a whole different way, and it doesn't necessarily the creation of that work, or locally I love Nancy Keystone's work, right, and she just had a show open last night. I think the hard thing is being a director is resource heavy, right? You can't really do it alone like a playwright can, you have to be able to try things out, and for being an actor and a playwright is very vulnerable in a very visible, direct way. For directors and designers, it's a little bit different because it means entering a room and saying, I don't really have it figured out, which is okay, you know what I mean? Which is scary when you're in a production timeline versus when you have a workshop, process where you can say that and say, let's just try these different things and explore and see what rises out. And so for me, it's just continuing back to also what sparks, right? Like what's the thing that I feel like sparks, and a lot of times right now the stories I feel are either we need something everything's about anti-fascism right now. That's like all we need all day long, just reminders about that. Or we need joy and celebration and community, and it's like, I never thought I'd be doing like a Mamma Mia, but I was like, great, what we need is something like that, and what we need is just a different way to do it through the lens of our communities. So I keep thinking about that in terms of if I can only do one project, most of us are all working at other companies and of other things, so if I can only do one thing a year, what is that thing that I feel like will spark me, that gets my imagination going, And as a director, I think I always need something. My mind always is spinning, and I always need something to look forward to, even if it's 2 years down the line. And it's one of those things where if I don't have something that someone's offered, it's then, well, what was the thing that keeps coming back to me, right? I keep thinking right now about like A Good Person of Szechuan, and this question of like, does goodness exist in the world? And then I keep thinking about there's a lot of conversations about the Olympics happening in LA, and so I'm always just like, oh, well, what happens if we just did, A Good Person in a wrestling ring where like things are already delineated on the floor and the circle's already there, and what does that mean? Because that, that metaphor of being pulled and pushed in different directions is that, and so that to me is then like, oh, there's something there, and then we have to interrogate it. We're like, well, would I hire myself to do this? Then we go out in town and then we pitch it to other friends, and we're like, I have this idea, what could be there? Or it's also then finding who are those core collaborators that we want to bring onto a project like that.
So it sounds like the spark can happen around a piece that already exists or a piece that doesn't exist, but either way, it's kind of like, what is that question that's keeping you up at night?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Reflected
When it's a
work.
new play, we know it's just a long timeline of gestation, right? It could take, for musicals, it's 7 to 10 years. For plays, it can sometimes be 3 to 5 years or 7 years. And some of that is, well, who am I just excited to be in the room with,
Yes.
in 2-week chunks over the next few years as we're shaping this. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. Susan, you spoke about your work in Shakespeare. I'm curious, when you're approaching a Shakespeare play you've been asked to direct, or I don't know if you have the opportunity also to be like this one. Okay, great. So like what's your way in, or how do you bring it to a modern audience?
So 2 parts, right? When I'm asked to do it, I feel like I do have a little like a garage with some Shakespeare on the shelf, in my mind. I have ooh, I'd like to do this play that with this, spin, or I'd like to set this play here, or wouldn't it be interesting if this, So I do have a little tiny bit of a garage. Although right now my garage is sort of not empty, but I'm like, ooh, I got to put some stuff in there. So, so I'm going to go out to the dollar store and buy some things and put them in. No. But so there's that, and then so when I'm asked to do something, if something's in the garage, I pull it out, But I never approach the conceptual ideas or the things that I interpret the Shakespeare that I direct. I'm very conscious to not just do it for that sake. It has to it has to come from something that I believe in, something that I connect to, something that the community that I'm doing it in will connect to. For instance, when I was directing up in Mammoth Lakes, California, at a small Shakespeare festival there, that's where, the first assignment they gave me was something that they want. Well, actually, no, I lie. I was going to say that they asked me to direct this play. They actually said, what can you do for us? And I was like, oh, wow, okay. But I was like, okay, where am I? I'm in this community, you know, in the mountains where the ski resort is. And I was like, well, and you know, I thought about all the stuff that goes on there. And I, in my garage, I had already had this sort of eye on setting the play of Midsummer Night's Dream in the town of Mammoth. Just like, that's how I'll do it. That's how I'll just introduce myself here as this director. I will set the play in this town because there was just so much that fit that story naturally that I didn't feel like I had to really change anything. And people actually thought that I had changed stuff. And I was like, I did not change any of the words of Shakespeare. I just, you know, layered on these characters that are people that you see at the grocery store. It's a very small town, so I was kind of going for that, to mine that. And then, you know, when I was asked to direct Hamlet 2 summers ago up at Santa Cruz, again, I had a tiny bit in the garage, but not a lot, because oddly, I had never really thought that much about Hamlet. I know that's so crazy as a director, right? That you know. So, but I still said yes to doing it, and then after I said yes, I was like, oh fuck, yes to. But I did. I had to sit with myself because I didn't want to just put something on it, you know. And then, you know, the ideas started coming, and you know, I don't know. I just, you know, it sort of grew organically. I do a lot with music. I sit, I do research. I do a lot of just meditating, like mental sort of stillness work on what the story is, and sort of let it. I know that I don't mean to sound so esoteric, but I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I'm just saying, it's not like I go into, you know, a blank space. I do have to like marinate on it. You know what I mean? And then when things start hitting me, and I'm paying attention to the world around me too a lot, like things that are happening, then I'm and again, community. That's sort of my way in, and yeah.
Beautiful. Great. Well, we have just a few more minutes here, so I have one final question for everybody to answer. Part of why we're here with this director-driven grant is that I'm really curious to have conversations with directors about how we can better support directors' work, right? Like, the whole purpose is to give a director resources to help bring their vision to life. So I would love for us I would hear from my brilliant co-panelists here. In your dream world, how could we as a community better support directors to dream big and take big risks?
I think maybe expanding like how we think about timeline and process and product. Like, there is, as you said, like this is kind of the model that we have. How can we kind of push beyond that model where we're like, it does take this long? Like for this play, part of I think why it was able to develop the way it was is because for the first many years there was no external pressure or deadline, and we just kind of could come to it and come back, and it was this, in the words of Octavia E. Butler, a positive obsession, a thing that kept drawing you in, and you can't escape it. It has to come through. And so I think if we really build relationships and move away from urgency, and like how can we let capitalism imprison art less? You know, like, I don't have the answer, I really don't. But I think if we really, lock into relationship and story and why these things are important, and give ourselves, what I often always say is what artists need the most is time and space. How can we give artists more time and space to figure that out, and to build community and start, you know, a couple of our actors were with us for early workshops like 4 or 5 years ago, weekend workshops, and then other people, the other half came to this. So I think it's really in building with your people and daring to be more expansive in how something happens.
Love it.
Was it me?
Go for it.
I mean, my simple answer is the work that I do for Playpen, which is new play development. I mean, as some of you know, if you're, you come to theater, and I'm assuming your theater practitioners are out there and whatnot, and if you don't know, a lot of these incubators have closed. And that to me is not good. I mean, it should not be, it should not scare, but it should definitely, sound some alarms, because if we don't have people if we don't have spaces where playwrights can come to do the work that we do at Playpen, which is just focused on play development. We are not producers of full-length plays. We produce, I say produce, but we produce staged readings of plays in development. But for my money, all the work is obviously being done in that rehearsal hall, in that workshop, getting up to it. And if we don't have those spaces, then we don't have any more new plays being generated, and that's sad. And when you look at programs being cut, playwriting programs being cut from universities, it's like, whoa, it's just going to be the death of it. So I don't know what the answer is, but funding for that, people getting excited about that, like when you see the billions and trillions of dollars that we know are out there, that it's like, fund arts, please fund arts,
No, I mean, time and space are so in, and I think the irony is, Directors Lab West was modeled after Directors Lab, which was in New York, that many of us participated in, no longer exists. But now this offshoot actually is picking up that mantle, and I think it's a couple of things. Being a director is a pretty lonely process, and so creating places where community can gather, like this, like Directors Lab West. I think Drama League is doing a good job of doing that. But a lot of these other programs that used to be there have gone away for a variety of reasons, and so whatever ways that cohorts can get together, I think, is important. And then at CTG, we again, I've been trying to think how we can support all artists, not just, playwrights have a specific process, and so we have these resident artist programs where it's been designers, directors, actors, writers, who we say, here is, you have access to our space, and here's a little bit of funding, do what you will with it. And some of them are using it to pay insurance, some of them it's helping them just pay their bills, others are, okay, now I can hire 5 actors and have a couple weeks in the room with them, and do that. And so I think the other thing is kind of what can be as open a vessel and model for support for artists, and we can just start small, and it's $5,000 in access to rehearsal space, and then I think in time, hopefully talk to funders and build off of that.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, mentorship. I think that's a big one for me. And whether that be like if you are a director, figure out how to have an assistant in the room, even and find a way to have them get a little bit of money so that they're not paying for everything as they walk. I know that it's hard. I mean, budgets are hard, but having a chance, because director is solo work, so having a chance to be in the room is really important. I learned a lot because I produce a lot. That's how I didn't go to school for directing or anything like that. I was producing, and I got to watch a lot of different directors work, and I learned a lot that way. And also being an actor, whatever, you learn. There are different ways you learn, but I think if I've always wished that I had an opportunity to be able to either, and I know there's a whole system of associates and stuff like that, which I get in the week because I'm not really clear on what that L is. But I mean, I think it's good. And then I would also say, in terms of community building, myself and Nikki DiLoretto, who's another director around town, we have a group of women, trans, and non-binary directors who we try to go out and see other women, trans, and non-binary directors work, just to support each other, if nothing else, and try to have meetups beforehand. Because again, how are we able to find each other, find resources, talk about, because a lot of times also I'll get offered a play and I'll be like, I am not the right person for this play.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. Yeah. Here's a list of people who probably might be better suited for this, let's say. And I think that's also something that we know we all do. But also being able to know what the pool is and have interaction with that pool, because then we're all helping each other moving things forward. And just as also on the funding, we all need funding. That is baseline, we all know that. I just want to encourage everyone, I know we all go, obviously you're here. The people you know in your world who are not theater folks, bring one of them to the theater. Seriously, I mean, you know, it's like
Change your life.
literally just one at a time. I mean, bringing people in and welcoming them in and talking to them about what they've seen and asking them questions about what the play means to them. Like those things that sound very like whatever, base, whatever, you know, I don't even know, or simplistic, like making sure that those folks, because like that's the thing, like those are the people that we want in the room because they will also end up being funders and board members and supporters in different ways that will help us to keep growing this.
Beautiful, thank you. And on that note of associate directing, want to shout out Karen Rose for her for the Aaron play and helped curate an incredible display outside, which gives you a little more insight into Carly and Karen's process for the directing of the Aaron play. Thank you all so much for this wonderful conversation. I just want it to keep going forever, but we all, you know, we're good. Well, we're good for now. Let's keep it
out
now.
in the lobby.
Yes, let's hang out in the
Okay.
lobby.
Yeah,
And I will have a longer interview coming out that Carly and I did more about their process, which again, also we could have kept talking for hours and hours, but we'll try to keep it short and sweet. So follow us at Big Little Theater Co. On Instagram. And yes, tell your friends about the Aaron play.
2 more weekends.
2 more weekends. And thank you.